So on October 28th, 2019, I published this channel's first ever video, Gaming at Toxicity. It was a school project for a class I took in 9th grade, and while the project got me a good grade, it was made horribly. I didn't have a proper script to go off of, and due to that I stuttered quite a bit. And my mic was also freaking garbage, so in all, that video was a mess.
But we have to address how toxicity is basically shown in other.
But since then, I would say the quality of my videos have greatly increased since then, and even though I have some misses on the channel, I would say I'm pretty okay at this YouTube thing. So I decided that I would remake the Gaming and Toxicity video so that the past version of myself could marvel at the masterpiece that is this video. And just to insult my past self, I will be reusing all of the gameplay and music that I used in that video, but in way better quality. Hello everyone, I'm Detective Morel, the internet's greatest detective, and welcome to a remake video. Before I start, I do want to say that this is probably not going to be the only video I remake or make a sequel of on the channel. The YouTube ads video is pretty mediocre and needs some work for sure. And the Forgotten Cartoon series has a lot of plans for further installments, but anyways, let's get on with the video. Gaming, as long as it's been around, has always been a medium with its passion mainly being built around the enjoyment of others. Of course, as gaming has changed, so has the community itself, and with community change comes the acknowledgement of toxicity. Today, I want to talk about toxicity within a player base and how they can affect their fellow players. Today, our topic is gaming and toxicity. Before we move on, I would like to define what toxicity is, for I feel like gaming isn't really too important to define, as gaming is whatever you define it as. I don't want it to be, something set in stone. Toxicity, as defined by Google, is the quality of being very harmful or unpleasant in a persuasive or insidious way. In gaming or any sort of social context would be communication and or behavior that risks or causes harm to other people or players in verbal or physical action to spark a reaction from others. To make it simple, people usually act toxic because it's how they gain reaction or attention. Notice how I said attention, however. One perspective I would like to open up is simply the fact that toxic players aren't always people who are statues of toxic confidence. There are sometimes people who never truly received attention at home or at school and find that any attention is good attention. A lot of the players that are victims of toxicity, as well as are the ones delivering toxicity, are largely those in middle and high school. Try to keep this in mind as we move on. But anyways, toxicity within a player base is a major influence, because as much as we would like to deny it, toxicity has a very loud presence in a lot of communities, as when most people talk negatively about the game, the community is always the first topic of discussion. Look at games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, CSGO, and League of Legends. What do they all have in common? The toxic sides of their communities almost dominate all negative conversation about their games. This often leaves players being steered away from playing a game, as they'll usually assume that every player they run into will be of a toxic nature 100% of the time, and they'll probably stop playing the game pretty fast. So they pull the plug on the idea of playing a game before they, have either considered trying it out just a couple of times. Well, what does this mean from a corporate standpoint? Companies could miss out on potential sponsors, investors, and possible influencers supporting their game. This could equate to a loss of financial gain. And I would say that's pretty huge if you ask me. But anyways, let's look at some examples of toxicity within some gaming communities, shall we? I'm actually going to go over the exact same examples that I went over in the original video. Although they might be ever so outdated, I didn't cover them well enough at all. I simply mentioned them and went on like it was nothing. This time, I would like to give them their time. Okay, so small editor's note here. I feel like I should put this in there, that way you don't get confused when this section starts. But I can't find the Fortnite Reddit post or the Battle.net forum post that I used in the original video. There's a couple problems with it. Number one, I don't have the I can't call it a script. It was more like a bulleted list that had some links on it. I can't find it. Probably because it was on like my school account, but that's besides the point. So I'm just gonna leave those posts out. You'll see later. I'll just leave those ones out. I'm sorry. I'm sure you guys don't mind, but yeah. All right. Anyways, yeah. So our first post from Spartan75369 on the Steam community page, titled "Why CS:GO Players So Toxic." This is a player expressing their, I don't know if I want to really call it, I'll call it complaints about people on CS:GO. Usually it seems like they cannot go matches without people talking garbage and trying to kick them, even though they're about the same rank and score, is what they say. I don't know. Anyways, but they're new to the game, and this is a problem that a lot of people don't seem to realize, is that new players take a lot of flack in these competitive games for really no reason. But it's a problem that I can't really address right now, but I will say that I sympathize with this person. They say they have met some nice people though, but it seems to be very few and far between, unfortunately. But this isn't really what I really wanted to get into. This post, I ended up looking at the comments, and it's weird how people don't really seem to have much sympathy. One of these comments just says, "Are you in comp? Because that is the whole freaking reason of comp. To win, if you frick up, they will want to kick you." They don't really let this guy have a chance. They don't give him any sort of time of mind. They don't give him any, understanding. They don't have any understanding of the situation. It's like, hey, playing competitive, you gotta play the game. You gotta be good. And if you're not, frick you. You should get kicked. I'm sure that's not what they're trying to say. I'm sure there's some underlying message that I might be missing, but it seems a little weird to not say, like, I understand where you're coming from and this, that, and the other thing. Another comment is just another guy saying there's not a single multiplayer game where the player base isn't toxic. And while I can say not every player base is like super toxic, I guess I can see where they're coming from. Their reply is just, that's very true for anything on the internet, and unfortunately that is just the reality. But moving on, I did like one comment. I didn't really look too far in the comments, but I did like this comment from this person named Arrow. They were just being genuinely positive and giving this guy, I just blanked. Anyways, they were they were trying to sympathize with the person, is what I'm trying to say. They're just like, hey, I understand not everybody is good at this game, and whenever you meet toxic people, it's hard to deal with them, and you've got to sit with those people in the game for at least half an hour. But whenever you meet anybody friendly, you should try and add them and play with them. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. Of course, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but it does make it a lot more tolerable for you. Moving on to our next post, we have a Reddit post from user CSGO Never Again titled, "Why is the CSGO community so toxic?" They say that they had bought CSGO over the summer sale and they have just a bit over 20 hours in the game. They're a new player, so they are pretty mediocre at the game, and they say themselves that they know that they are bad. But they said that at least 1 in every 3 games, another player in the game, or they themselves, will be made fun of for being mediocre at the game. I keep using the word mediocre. I've only used it twice. I don't know what I mean by that, but their way of trying to cope with this is saying that maybe it was just like a bad match and it'll get better as they play more often. But that doesn't change at all, because there are as many toxic players from the beginning as there were current day when the post was made. Well, not current day, this is an 8-year-old post, but you know what I mean. They actually played a game where the guy on the top of the leaderboard was just really, really toxic, trying to vote kick a guy because he jumped off the map, even though he was the one who told him to jump off the map, so it's very weird. But one thing I found a little interesting about the post is the fact that they noted the fact that the COD community was better than the CSGO community. I find that just a little bit odd to put that in there because it's completely unnecessary, and comparing communities of two games that just are very competitive and are also both first-person shooters is very odd. I know that the play styles are different, even though Call of Duty has a search and destroy mode, but it's completely unnecessary. I don't think you needed to add that part in. They also mentioned that they're a casual player, but I just thought that I don't really think you needed to say that. But I will sympathize with this person. It seems that CSGO has had a toxicity problem. I don't know if it's the same as it was 8 years ago per se, but I don't know. If anybody still plays CSGO, feel free to let me know. Thanks. Now, I know that I've been talking about only negative experiences from CSGO, and I need negative experiences to make it known the problem, but not everything is going to be bad. We actually have something good to share from Kotaku.com. I know necessarily that talking about Blizzard isn't a good thing current day, considering the controversies that they have been through, and I'm sure the company's trying to do better, but that's besides the point. Here Blizzard has said that toxicity in Overwatch has gone down by 40%. This is an article from 2019, so I don't know if this is really holding up now, but I'm sure it is. I actually have played the game recently. It seems to be doing better than usual. I played about 5 games maybe, and there was only one game where there was a kid that was kind of just being rude for no reason. But I was able to get over it pretty fast, and the next game that I went into was perfectly fine, as every other game that I played was. But moving back on discussion, Natasha Miller says that toxicity in Overwatch has gone down 40% since last year's edition of 2 new features that they had added, the endorsement system and the looking for group system. Now, I can't say that. I have used both of those, and they are working just fine, as you can see. It's pretty useful getting endorsed for playing the game okay, and I'm sure that's very motivational for anybody who's actually trying to play the game. The looking for group feature, I don't know if that's the feature where you choose what class you want to play. Maybe that's something else. It is kind of difficult to play a class that you want when it's way easier to queue up in tank or healer. Of course, you could also try flex, but it doesn't really matter because you're probably going to get forced to play tank or healer anyways. But that's besides the point. It seems to be working fine. And I think other games should try and take notes from what Overwatch did by adding those 2 features. It might actually help out, kind of flatten out some of the toxicity. Of course, not all toxicity is going to leave, as unfortunate as it sounds. This is just kind of how humanity is nowadays, and we just kind of have to accept that fact. It's unfortunate, but I'm sure we'll be able to deal with it somehow in our own special ways, These are only some examples, but what are some we can create in our own minds? Maybe simply entering a game and people bullying you for the cosmetics you have equipped, or the level you present to the people you randomly queue with. To expand upon the cosmetic thing, people seem to find so much issue with what skins you wear or what skins you lack. Although it matters in the slightest, some people will get on your case for spending or not spending money on the game. Not everyone has the money to give for that kind of stuff, or their parents are keeping them from spending their money on games. It's odd, but I feel like there isn't too much for me to explain here. Back to the level topic, there's this mindset that the higher level you are, the better you are. The same can be said about your rank in games that have competitive modes. Although I can kind of see where some people are coming from on the rank argument, I don't understand what people are on about when it comes to that level argument. Not everyone has the time in their day-to-day lives to play a game for 33 hours a day and maintain their peak skill for weeks to come. And I bet most people are about to find what I'm about to say very controversial, but did you know that people take breaks on the games they play? Yes, that's right. Some people step away from games for days, weeks, and even months on end and come back later feeling less than average at the game. And although they should take a minute here and there to reintroduce themselves to the game, practicing and whatnot, you can't blame some people for not being as good at the game as you are. If you are one of these people, learn to help your team. It might not be your job to do so, but be more understanding of everyone else's situation. One of the many mistakes I made in my almost 3-year-old video on this same topic was making it seem like it was easy to deal with toxic behavior in any game that you played. Because if I'm being honest, the detective or Will that was speaking to you in that video wasn't very good at dealing with toxicity either. So, before I talk about anything else, let's take a look at 14-year-old Detective Morill's guide to dealing with toxicity. Number 1.
Just to, not to reply to people or ignore.
Ignore them. This could be useful, ignoring your toxic teammates by muting them, but this also introduces a myriad of new problems. Not only have you lost some comms, but some people do not take being muted lightly and will gladly throw the game for your simple action in distancing yourself from them. Number 2.
Use maybe sarcasm. Make them think that you're playing into their game, and then when they get overconfident, find the perfect time to knock them down.
The sarcasm setup. Unless you want more issues on your hand, please do not do this. Do not challenge people to 1v1s unless you're very confident in your own skill, and in the lack of skill to your teammate turned opponents. And please do not send toxic people long messages. Do you think they care about how their actions have affected you? Do you think that any part of them would like to sympathize with how you feel with this message? No. Quite frankly, they could care less about what they did to you and what they might do to other people. Do not do any of this, please. And finally, number 3.
That could easily, make everything easier for you. Leave the game. I said it, leave the game.
Leave the game. Honestly, this might be the most useful option. If they send you any friend requests or any stupid messages, you can just ignore them and block them, then move on with your life. There's nothing else to this one, so I feel like the younger me was actually cooking. They actually had something cooking with this one. Realistically speaking, I don't know if I can give any definitive way to deal with toxicity on the internet. I don't know if anyone can. But I will say that you just have to watch out for yourself and others. Don't let anyone become a victim to the behaviors of people who don't understand that each individual out there has their own set of feelings and that other people have voices that they can express as well. If you ever find yourself being a bystander in this sort of thing, please do not try to remain a bystander. We've all dealt with online toxicity, the hatred of others, and other things related to that. So we should all know by now that it is an unfortunate part of the internet that will never truly disappear. But we can all do our part to make the internet a little bit of a better place for everyone we interact with. Do your part, please. I think I did justice in remaking that old video. Again, I should preface that dealing with toxicity isn't easy, but try not to fight toxicity with more toxicity. Someone make a counter for each time I've said the word toxicity in this video. But I thank each and every one of you that decided to watch this video. I know I'm not necessarily the most consistent YouTuber, averaging at about 1 video per year, but I'll be trying my best to upload more than once every millennia. And as always, it's been elementary, my dear Watson.